Today we're comparing two very different ways to build a big 48-volt battery bank for solar power. Right now, DIY battery boxes are everywhere. A lot of people are building their own 16 kilowatt-hour systems using 314 amp-hour cells. But at the same time, ready-made 48-volt 100 amp-hour batteries have also become much cheaper. So, the big question is this. Is one large DIY battery box actually the better value, or does it make more sense to use three smaller batteries in parallel? In this video, we're going to compare a 314 amp-hour DIY battery box against three 51.2-volt 100 amp-hour lithium batteries connected together. We'll look at the total cost, the price per kilowatt-hour, extra parts like wires and fuses, and also some real-world advantages and disadvantages that many people forget to think about. And honestly, this comparison is more interesting than it looks at first, because cheaper does not always mean better for every setup. Let's start with the DIY battery box option first. The battery box we're looking at here is a 51.2-volt 314 amp-hour setup. That gives you around 16 kilowatt-hours of storage capacity. The total price for this setup is about $2,009, including the box, the cells, shipping, and sales tax from U.S. stock. If we break that down by usable storage, it comes out to around $125 per kilowatt-hour. That is actually very competitive for this much energy storage, especially for people building larger off-grid systems. One thing I do like about these larger DIY boxes is fewer external connections. Since everything is inside one enclosure, you usually end up with cleaner wiring and less cable clutter compared to multiple separate batteries. But of course, there are also some trade-offs, and we'll get into those in a minute. Now, let's compare that to the second option, which is using three separate 48-volt 100 amp-hour lithium batteries connected in parallel. Each battery gives you about 5.12 kilowatt-hours of storage. So with three batteries together, you get roughly 15.36 kilowatt-hours total. That is slightly less capacity than the DIY battery box, but still very close. Now, there are a lot of battery brands out there right now. Some are extremely cheap, and at first, they can look like a great deal. But sometimes the shipping cost changes everything, so you always need to check the final total price carefully before comparing batteries. For this example, we'll use batteries that are known to be decent quality and already popular in the solar community. If each battery costs around $680, then three batteries will cost about $2,040 total. But with a parallel battery setup, you also need a few extra parts that many beginners forget to include in the budget. First, every battery should have its own fuse for protection. In this setup, we're using three 125-amp fuses with fuse holders, which adds around $50. Then you need battery cables for all three batteries. That means three positive cables and three negative cables. Using proper 4-gauge pre-crimped cables, the cost is around $118. You'll also need a negative bus bar, which costs about $15. So after adding everything together, the total price for the parallel battery setup becomes around $2,213. That works out to roughly $144 per kilowatt-hour. So purely on price per kilowatt-hour, the DIY battery box wins this comparison. But cost is not the only thing that matters in a real solar setup. And honestly, this is where the smaller batteries start becoming very interesting for a lot of people. One of the biggest advantages of using multiple smaller batteries is redundancy. If one battery suddenly shuts down or develops a problem, the other batteries can usually keep your system running. That can be very useful in an off-grid setup where reliability matters. But with one large DIY battery pack, if the battery management system trips or there is a wiring issue inside the pack, the entire battery bank can go offline at once. Another big advantage is scalability. A lot of people cannot spend over $2,000 all at once. With smaller batteries, you can start with just one battery first and expand later as your solar system grows. That makes the upgrade path much easier for beginners. There is also the assembly side to think about. With a DIY battery box, you need to correctly assemble the cells, tighten bus bars properly, connect the battery management system, and make sure everything is balanced and safe. Now, to be fair, even pre-built batteries still require good wiring practices outside the battery, so neither option is completely risk-free. But overall, pre-built batteries are usually simpler for most beginners. Weight and portability also matter more than many people realize. One large 16 kilowatt-hour battery box can become extremely heavy and awkward to move. But with 3 separate batteries, you can move them one at a time, which is much easier during installation or maintenance. One extra thing worth mentioning is future replacement cost. If one smaller battery fails years later, replacing a single battery is often less painful financially than rebuilding or replacing one massive battery bank. So in the end, both options have strong advantages. The DIY battery box gives you better price per kilowatt hour and a cleaner all-in-one design. But the 3-battery setup gives you more flexibility, easier expansion, and some extra protection through redundancy. Personally, I think the better choice really depends on the type of solar user you are. Are you building a large, permanent off-grid system, or do you prefer a simpler setup that can grow over time? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. And if you enjoyed this comparison, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join the Battery Hacker community for more real-world solar and battery content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.